Welcome everyone once again. This is another lecture on public sector accounting. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, just click the subscribe button and also the bell icon by the subscribe button. Also hit it so that anytime I post a video, you'll be the first to get it. It's very, very easy to do. So just hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell, which is the bell icon as well. Thank you very much. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Those are our social media handles. If you look for Pinnacle Professional College, you should definitely see us. Now let's move into today's objective. Today we'll be talking mainly about public procurement. Public procurement. So please stick and stay with me while I walk you through public procurement issues. So public procurement, what is it all about? When you hear the word procurement, it simply means purchase or acquisition. Purchase or acquisition. The word public, we all understand the word public. So public procurement simply means public purchase. It simply, in a nutshell, it means that the process relating to the purchase of items, goods, services, or any other kind of work. And it is usually done by public boards, public commissions, public authorities, central government MDAs, local government entities. Those are the people who engage in public procurement activities. These are public institutions. Public institutions. One of the things we should note is public procurement has some sources of leakages, right? There are lots of things that happen in the public procurement that makes them lose money or lose revenue. In a nutshell, do things inefficiently. And some of the sources are bribery and corruption. Another thing is nepotism or favoritism, where public institutions buy goods from someone who doesn't have the capacity to give you the best in terms of the delivery of the goods, but because of favoritism, they just go with that person. Another thing is the purchase of inferior goods. So let's say you are given a budget of 5,000 to purchase chairs, right? In some public institutions, they might buy it for too cheap or inferior chairs for 2,500 and take the rest. So these are sources of leakages, and it's a problem when it comes to public procurement. So public procurement is a high risk area that certainly requires prudent financial management. There are principles that are supposed to underlie public procurement. And if these principles are upheld, some of the sources of leakages would be essentially reduced. Number one is accountability. Public procurement, there must be accountability measures which govern public procurement. Otherwise, anyone can, if there's no accountability system, there's going to be a lot of corruption, there's going to be a lot of favoritism, and things won't work properly. Number two is openness. The public procurement process must be transparent, must be very, very transparent so that it's clear. Okay, so we put out, this advertisement in the newspaper. We saw the people who, put in their tender for, the work and all that. It has to be very clear. If it's shady, then it breeds bribery, it breeds favoritism, it breeds corruption. Number three is economy. As we all know, public institutions and even private institutions as well are all for value for money. Value for money. So economy is simply, being able to make purchases at the lowest cost possible. Economy, economizing. You shouldn't spend lavishly on something that you could have spent less for. So that's a principle surrounding public procurement. Number four is integrity. As we all know, public procurement transactions must be honest and straightforward. There must be honesty in public procurement transactions. Transparency, which, moves side by side with openness. Then competition. There must be some form of competition when it comes to public procurement. Otherwise, people, if there's no form of competition, that's when favoritism breeds, that's where favoritism survives. So there must be some form of competition that allows everyone to participate in the public procurement process, Then it has to be fair as well. So these are the principles that surround the public procurement activity. And let's move on to the Public Procurement Act, which is then governed by the whole Public Procurement Authority. The legality surrounding that is governed by Act 663. The importance of Act 663 is to establish the Public Procurement Authority. You can call it PPA. And their purpose is to define the tendering process and the procedures for making arrangements for procurement. They define the tendering process. That's very, very crucial. So that's what Act 663 is supposed to do. When we say tender, it means to offer or present something formally, It's to offer or present something formally. In procurement language or procurement vocabulary, it simply means to make a formal written offer to carry out work or supply goods or supply some form of services. You need to make a formal written offer to carry out work. So you are putting in your tender, that's a formal offer to carry out or some work or supply some goods. The reason for institutionalizing the PPA is to coordinate and oversee public procurement in public service to ensure efficiency in the use of public resources. That's very, very key. Efficiency in the use of public resources. That's the whole reason for the Public Procurement Authority. What are the functions of the Public Procurement Authority? Section 3 of Act 663. They exist to develop draft rules, instructions, and other regulatory documents on public procurement. They give instructions when it comes to matters of public procurement. They also facilitate the training and development of public officers that are involved in public procurement. Another thing is also that, which is very, very key, is that they define a list of firms that are restricted from engaging in public procurement. There are some firms that are restricted because of some activities, some bad activities or some unprofessional activities they have been in the past. So they've been restricted from engaging in public procurement activities. The PPA helps to define that list. Number 5, they formulate public procurement policy, and they also help the local community to become competitive suppliers. So it's an overall powerful institution that helps overall public procurement to be properly regulated and managed. Very, very important. Now let's look at procurement structures, and we'll be talking about the tender evaluation panel for today. We'll be looking at the tender evaluation panel. This is an expert group appointed by, so there are different procurement structures. You have the tender evaluation panel, you have the procurement entity, you have tender committees, you have tender review boards. But today we'll be focusing on the tender evaluation panel. This is an expert group appointed by the entity to evaluate tenders based on established criteria. They evaluate tenders based on established criteria. So the name even suggests it, right? Tender evaluation. So they evaluate tenders. And they also assist the tender committee. See? So that's their purpose. Now we cannot talk about tender evaluation without talking about the procurement plan. So what is a procurement plan? The procurement plan is simply a document that is being prepared by a procurement entity that shows certain things, right? It shows the procurement method. What was the method used for procurement? The cost involved, and processes for execution. procurement plans are supposed to be prepared. Planning is very, very key, and it's very, very key in the area of procurement. They are supposed to be prepared annually by all procurement entities, and this would be submitted to the tender committee 30 days before the end of the financial year, for them to look at it, So that's what the procurement plan is for. But what does it contain? What does the procurement plan contain? It contains sources of funding, things related to costs. It contains the estimation of the value of goods, the breakdown of goods. What kind of goods are we looking at? Let's break them down. The delivery schedule is also in the procurement plan, and the planned procurement expenditure. So things relating to costs should be in there. Things related to delivery schedule should be in there, and the breakdown of the goods and services. Now, as we've all noticed, the procurement plan is an important document. It's a very, very important document. So what is the importance of preparing a procurement plan? It helps you to prioritize your procurement needs. Planning in general helps you to prioritize. When you plan, you'll be able to tell what is more important than another thing. What thing is more important than another? So it helps in prioritizing procurement needs. It also helps to consolidate procurement needs into bulk purchases at lower unit costs. So when you have a plan, you're able to make purchases, large purchases at lower unit cost. If you don't have a plan, your procurement is scattered, and therefore you end up spending more. Now let's look at some methods of public procurement. This is very, very key. So I'd like you to pay attention here. Methods of public procurement. There are different types. There are 5 types. Number 1 is the two-stage tendering. Number 2 is the restricted tendering. Number 3, single sourcing or sole sourcing. Number 4, competitive tendering. And number 5, request for quotation. So we would look at each of them and see when they are suitable, right? So the two-stage tendering, suppliers or contractors that are just invited, they are invited to submit initial tenders, which contain their proposals. They are invited to submit initial tenders, which contain their proposal without any tender price. And then those who are accepted are invited to submit their final tender with prices. So it's in 2 stages. The first stage is that contractors are invited to submit initial tenders, which have their proposal, but without a tender price. Then those who are accepted are invited to submit final tenders with prices. It is suitable, or it is appropriate, when the procurement entity enters into the contract for experimental purposes or research purposes. Very, very key. Now let's move on to restricted tendering. This is open to tenders who have been pre-selected or selected through pre-qualification. So there are some people or some tenders that are selected through pre-qualification or through a pre-qualification process. There's a process that pre-qualifies them. In this case, few contractors are invited to participate in the procurement process. It's restricted, so few contractors are invited to participate. It is suitable when it is expensive to evaluate a large number of tenders. When the tenders are so many, sometimes it can become demanding, and so restricted tendering really helps. Sole sourcing, as the name implies, is where only one contractor is selected. And this is appropriate when there are security concerns. So when there are security concerns, you might want to fish out for only one supplier, because confidentiality is key when it comes to security issues. Or there are situations where a single supplier will have exclusivity over a service or a good. And so sole sourcing becomes relevant in that case. You have competitive tendering. This is where contractors are invited to take part in the public bidding for supply of goods and services. and it could be national or international, right? So if it's national, it means that people within the nation are invited to take part in the bidding process. If it's international, foreign firms are also allowed to join in. You have requests for quotation. The entity here would request invoices from many suppliers and will select the supplier with the lowest invoice. So they'll request for quotes from different suppliers and select the supplier with the lowest invoice. This method is suitable when there's an established market for the good. I hope that's clear. Now let's look at qualifications of a tenderer. We already defined a tender as a formal offer to supply a good or, to provide some work of some form. Number one, there must be legal capacity. There must be technical competence to perform the contracts. And the tenderer must have paid taxes, and must also be solvent. So that's very, very important. That's very, very important. That's very, very important. So basically, these are this is where we will bring this lecture to an end. We'll be delving more into public procurement in our subsequent videos. This is only a part one to lay the foundation for you to understand public procurement and what it is all about. It's important to understand the methods of public procurement, which we've already discussed, and understand, public procurement, the reason for it, the act that supports it, and all that. So thank you for watching us. If you haven't subscribed to this YouTube channel, please do so. And if you can also join our Telegram group. You can also join our Telegram group, which is t.me/Pinnacle Professional College. You should be able to find us. Thank you and have a good day.